So the true self is when we go beyond just this outer ego and we don't identify with it as who we are, but then we start to connect to this energy of this stable energy, this creative energy, the energy of the heart, the energy of intuition, this expansive energy that we can tap into. It's this resource that, it's limitless. This is how we create real abundance. This is how we create real, like insane love in our life. And so it is the whole practice, the whole way that we shift from over identifying with this into identifying with something much bigger and much deeper. And when we do that, it really transforms every avenue of our life.
I want to welcome back to the podcast the very bright and beautiful soul that I sincerely admire, Kimberly Snyder. Kimberly is a spiritual guide, meditation teacher, nutritionist, and holistic wellness expert. She's a 3-time New York Times bestselling author of 5 previous books, including Radical Beauty, which she co-authored with Deepak Chopra. She is the founder of Solluna, a holistic lifestyle brand that offers wellness products, digital courses, practical enlightenment meditation, and the Solluna Circle. As well, she's the host of the top-rated Feel Good podcast. Today, we welcome her newest book and also one of the most dear to her heart, You Are More Than You Think You Are, Practical Enlightenment for Everyday Life. Now to welcome Kimberly Snyder to the show. Kimberly, welcome back to Passion, Love, Pursuit podcast. I'm so excited. This is the second time you are coming on the show, and I'm so excited to talk about this subject today because I think when we recorded the last time, you mentioned to me that you were I think you had a book in the work, and I don't believe you told me what the book was or anything. So obviously this show will be all about your newest book, which is You Are More Than You Think You Are, which I don't know if you can see that, but I'm so excited. Like I mentioned, I just finished the book and I'm just loving it. There's
Amazing.
So much greatness in this. And I know this seems like a very simplistic topic of how to live as our true authentic self with joy, peace, and just abundance. It seems so simplistic, which I know relatively it is, but so many people are not living that. So this book is so needed right now, which I know. Well, first of all, everybody, okay, this is Kimberly Snyder. She was on my podcast before. I will also include that in the show notes for previous episodes so you can learn more about the other things she teach. We'll focus mostly on this book, but how are you doing today, first of all?
I'm doing great, Erica. Thank you for having me back on. I'm glad our schedules worked out. I'm glad we could do this. I'm glad you love the book. So yeah, it's always fun when we get to have these conversations and share. I love the organic nature of, just doing this and yeah, just sharing with the collective. I will say that this idea of you are more than you think you are is, may feel simplistic, but it's actually the most profound thing in the world. And I'm so passionate about sharing this because I don't think that most of us are taught these concepts. I mean, I certainly wasn't taught this, and it wasn't until I backpacked for many years, actually for 3 years, for many, many months, that if I could share quickly, Erica, how I found these teachings was in India. I was there for many months. I didn't really know what yoga and meditation were. I thought yoga was like poses, which I think most people still think it is, versus like a really tiny part of this whole philosophy where yoga means union, about how to really connect in. And it's like, what are we connecting into, which we'll get to in a second. But so I was, backpacking, and I went to India, and it was like blowing my mind. And then I found this teacher, Paramahansa Yogananda, this great yoga guru who I never heard of, but he was the one that brought yoga to the West. And so he's the one that came here in the 20s and started talking about it, and it caused so much attention and so much like excitement that he went all the way to meet with Calvin Coolidge, who was the president of the United States. And since then, so many people have been applying his teachings to elevate their life, including Steve Jobs. Autobiography of a Yogi by Yogananda was his only book on his iPad, and he read that book every year from when he was 14 on, they said. So anyways, the reason I tell you this, Erica, is I got back to America after backpacking, and I was starting to live these teachings and apply them. They're very practical teachings and things that you do in your everyday life. It's about working with energy. And I started noticing these patterns and things were shifting in my life. And I was broke. I didn't have any money. But I was, teaching yoga. I was going back to nutrition school, and I was telling all my yoga students about, my blog, that I started this free blog, and it just grew organically. And then I started working with celebrities. My first celebrity found me, even though I don't own a TV to this day. I got on film sets. I started doing Good Morning America regularly. And then the first book deal came. And here's the funny part of the story. It was HarperCollins and my first editor with Sarah. So I had this book, which is essentially the teachings of this book. This is exactly 10 years ago. And I said, hey, I want to do this book called Catching the Fire. It's a travel memoir with some of these teachings. And she looked at my website and she's like, well, the food stuff is starting to really pick up and people are seeming to like your recipes. So why don't we do a food book first and we'll do this book second? The first book, the first book ended up being the Beauty Detox Solution, which got really big. It sold like 1 million copies. So then the second book, they wanted to do a food book again. And then the third book started going back into this more about energy and chakras. The fourth book I wrote with Deepak Chopra. So it's starting to go that way. But here we are 10 years later, 6 books later.
Amazing.
And this book is really my full playbook of how you really do create massive, love, abundance, confidence, intuition, vitality in your life. And it's based in these ancient teachings, but with supportive science and stories to illustrate how you actually apply them.
Yeah, that's what's so fascinating about your story. As you were touching on when you first started writing books, the publisher wanted you to go the direction as you were teaching at the time, nutrition. And a lot of people know you for food and, nutrition in general and beauty. So it's interesting that that's how your path kind of unfolded. But it seems like this book, as I think you mentioned, this was your true calling.
Well,
And
yes. And Erica, like, it's funny how people pigeonhole people, you know what I mean? Like you get labeled, or this is the easier thing to see is food, which is tangible. But when I was working with clients, it was always this holistic lifestyle. It was always, the cornerstones I teach now, which are food, body, emotional well-being, spiritual growth. Like Drew Barrymore is here on the cover quote, and I've been working with Drew for over a decade. And it was never just, oh, you got in earlier.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm like, I didn't see that one. But I do see Deepak Chopra's insert there. So that's great.
Yeah. So it was always this, way, but I think in the West, just like yoga becomes like what we see, the poses, versus all this internal energy, like pratyahara, withdrawing the senses, coming in. I think that it was kind of like, oh, well, I can do these recipes, and that's like a really tangible thing that for me to do and follow. So like look my best or feel my best. But the reason I'm so excited about this book is it is very practical. You'll see, Erica, as you go through, these practices are meant to be, how do you become more magnetic? How do you actually elevate your vitality across every cell in your body? How do you what's the most effective way to meditate, and how do you create? So the chapter 19 is about how we take our individual unique talents that are formless, right? It's energy inside of us, and how do we understand how to work with it to create our best stuff, our best products, our best websites, our best ideas, whatever it is. So you and I were talking a little bit about, the structure of the book. And so, well, first of all, I'll just say that the book is centered around this idea of connecting to your true self. And you said it's simplistic, but I would say 99.99999% of people haven't really been taught about this unless you've read the scriptures of India, right? So you ask people, what is the true self? People don't really know. Why? Because, well, yogic science says there's a true self. And then there's what's known as the pseudo self, which is the ego, which is basically everything of how you look like, what you're doing in the world, what your 5 senses are seeing and smelling and hearing and interacting with. So the problem is we identify this ego as who we are, right? So we think we are what we look like. We are what we do, all these things in the world, what Wayne Dyer calls less than 2% of who we are. Underneath all that is this energy. It's this energetic blueprint So a neuroscientist that came on my podcast was talking about mind just isn't just in the brain. It's in every cell of your body. It's also this gravitational field around you. We don't see it with our eyes, but everything really is this pulsating kinetic energy. So the true self is when we go beyond just this outer ego and we don't identify with it as who we are, but then we start to connect to this energy of this stable energy, this creative energy, the energy of the heart, the energy of intuition, this expansive energy that we can tap into. It's this resource that, it's limitless. This is how we create real abundance. This is how we create real, like insane love in our life. And so it is the whole practice, the whole way that we shift from over identifying with this into identifying with something much bigger and much deeper. And when we do that, it really transforms every avenue of our life,
Yeah. And would you
blows
say that,
everything out.
yeah, would you say the true self is basically, in other words, our soul?
So you can call it many different things. We can say it's spirit individualized inside of us. You can call it the soul. You can call it the light. You can call it the Sushumna Nadi, the energy that's inside our central energy channel, spine up into our brain. So one of the things that we do in yoga, in this, in meditation, in true meditation, remember yoga means union. So it's about union with the true self, with the divine. So it's not, meditation isn't meant to just relax and de-stress. That's a byproduct. Relaxing means I'm relaxing my five senses versus union means I'm actually working to connect into something deeper. And so it's a whole different system. And, the way the book is structured is part one is getting past the biggest blocks. So that's where we talk about fear. That's what we talk about being whole. So we start to see that we're more than our behaviors, because a lot of us carry a heavy burden of shame about, things we've done, or we don't feel like we're a good person, or we yelled, or we, we were gossipy or judgmental, or we cheated, or whatever it is. We need to take the lessons and learn. But we also need to understand that the true self, who we are, is beyond all our behaviors, good and bad, right? So we get past the big blocks in the first section. And then the second section is cultivating more of the attributes of the true self. So that's where we talk about true confidence, intuition, peace, so on and so forth. And then part three, once you've established that's where we get into creating. That's the creator chapter: abundance, magnetism, drawing things in without this like crazy pushing, over efforting. So it's really meant to be structured and read that way.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to unpack a couple things, because there was one thing when you were first talking about this that we are sometimes put into a box that people say like, oh, this is probably what you should be doing because this is your expertise or whatnot. And I remember I was originally going to write a book on and do a course on something called Master Your Body. And basically my whole trajectory of my career that I was doing before I started stepping into really my purpose is keeping basically the same body for 17 years, because I do fit modeling, which is basically fit for clothing brands, and everything's fit to my body. So I had to stay the exact same size, which I've done that for over 17 years. And so I knew that easy thing that I could speak to is how to master your body. And it's become like creating a program for a lifestyle plan more so. Long story short, I felt kind of hesitant because I didn't feel it was my calling. I didn't feel I was drawn to it. I felt it was just the low hanging fruit.
Yes.
And so I remember I was constantly battling with that thought, like, is this really what I should do first? And luckily one day I went on a walk. I put my phone away, which was a really good lesson to learn, because in that quiet time where I was just going on a walk, just being with my own thoughts, I was able to get a download, the calling that I felt most, if you want to say passion, purpose led of what I should be doing now. And I realized the thing I shouldn't be doing is the Master Your Body program, because I don't feel that is where I feel most connected to. And so as we're talking about, sometimes I've had people say to me, it's like, oh, this is your expertise. You've been doing it so long. So many people can learn from it. but I kind of resist it because my own intuition is telling me that's not what my true calling is. I have a much bigger
Right.
purpose to serve. And so the reason why I bring that up is you mentioned intuition. And I think some people don't know how to connect with their intuition. And it is essential because that is truly our own, if you want to say, spirit, universe, God speaking to us, and our soul speaking to us in the direction that leads us to our higher, most truest, authentic self. So
Yes.
how do you recommend somebody gets deeper in touch or even connected to their own intuition?
Yes. So a lot I can say about that. Um, First of all, I'll say that part of the ego and identifying with the ego is getting really caught up in thoughts. So it's the rational mind, so to speak. It's this, evaluating, it's the judging part, it's the looking out here. This is the part of us that feels, oh, I better do this because this is the safe choice. Or it's the part of us that also feels small and limited. That's why we want to do the safe choice. This is what I should be
Sure.
doing. There's a part of us that compares, that looks out and doesn't feel good enough or doesn't feel enough for all these different reasons because we're identifying out here. So when we start to connect to our energy inside, Yogananda calls us the infallible voice of the divine, right? We are not working on the same energy levels at all, right? We're going way past, Eckhart Tolle would talk about go past thought. And I didn't really know what he meant for a long time. Thought is constructs, thought is formed ideas that come from this part of your mind and this 3D reality. What I'm talking about is, again, it's like when people are meditating, just trying to relax, you're not going into the deepest part of yourself. What the book talks about is these practices which come from thousands of years ago, where the rishis and the sages, the real masters, taught us the way, right? The Raja Yoga, the Kriya Yoga that Yogananda taught has been around for thousands of years. It's about connecting in. So how do we do that? First thing is ego is out here, like we said, with the peripheral nervous system, sensing, seeing, smelling. So the first step is you want to pull the energy out from here into your spine, into your central nervous system, right? Out here, into your spine, into your medulla oblongata, into your brain. And now you're starting to concentrate the energy in. And this is one of the limbs of yoga, pratyahara. So what you can start to do if you're listening to this, and you're like, well, how do I start to do this? It starts with 5 to 7 minutes every morning sitting in meditation, an effective meditation. So I do have, Erica, meditations I put out every week for free. The practical enlightenment meditations. If someone's looking for a free resource to get started, it's on the Solluna app and on our website. And why this is important, you mentioned something before in your story. You put your phone down and you went on your own. So everything pulling us out here, like our phones, alerts, social media, people walking by, like all this stuff is outer doing. And so the only way to really hone your intuition and to build it is to spend time to balance all the time out here with time inside, right? And connecting in. So one of the most powerful things we can do is to meditate every morning to get into that flow of connection with the body, with the breath, with your intuition, and it starts to build over time. And then what I recommend as you start to drop in deeper and deeper through this, effective meditations, after you're done meditating, then you get out your journal. And then here's where you can write a question or ask a question. What project should I be following? What should I be doing after you've meditated? And Yogananda teaches this as well, to really meditate and sit quietly, and then you take action. So great action, inspired action comes from beingness first. Otherwise, we could just be in a pattern. We're acting out of fear, or like, oh, that's the safe choice, doing the body matching thing, like da 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 da. We're not coming from this expansive place. All those thoughts actually come from lack. Like, oh, this is what I'm known for, so I better do this. Otherwise, I may not make enough money for my program. Versus creating from the inside out, which is what, my book is about, which is, and how this book came to be. Like I was mentioning, it just came out of me when I was 34 weeks pregnant with Moses. I wasn't planning to write a book. It just came out. Whoop, it wants to be on the earth. So when we're doing that, instead of trying to figure out what people want, when we're going outside in, we're never going to create our best stuff. It has to come from tuning into this energy, this the divine, intelligent, expansive energy. And then we're aligning with, you could say we're spirit individualized, right? These individual, unique souls, but we're all part of the same source. So when we're tuning in, it means we can tune into our best unique talents. We have a way of doing things that no one else can do. So then you can start to tap into that. And that's what the magnetism chapter is about as well. And then that exudes out. And then people have a different way of relating to you. People listen to you differently. There's a different resonance in your voice, there's a different resonance in your auric field, which sounds like kind of a funny concept, right? But it's the gravitational field. Quantum physics will show there is
Everything's
waves
energy.
of
Yes.
energy. There
Yeah.
isn't, we aren't separate entities. And so there is a lot of supportive science I put into the book as well for the discerning mind to really understand that this stuff works. But I always say it's the experience, and Yogananda said this as well. You are meant to experience these practices, experience meditation, and watch what happens in your life.
As they say, it's a practice.
Yes.
So it's something that we do have to continuously do. I actually just started, if you want to say, religiously meditating in 2021. So it's only been a
Mm.
year that I've been truly committed to a meditation practice. And it's all because the amazing people I've interviewed, that it's like the common denominator between many successful people or a lot of people in personal development is they meditate. So
Mm.
I'm just taking other people's advice that this really, and also luckily my boyfriend started meditating before me, about a year before, and he tells me his profound downloads that have literally changed the trajectory of his life and how he
Mm.
operates. So when I was able to witness it, I'm like, okay, I want some of this. And so, but for me, it's been absolutely a practice. Sometimes I feel I just get peace in meditation, and sometimes I feel I do get somewhat, if you want to say, downloads and insights, which is really profound. And I think it is so important that we need to step away from the noise outside of us. I think that is the most important thing all of us to do, is just step outside the noise and be able to get into a space of quietness so that we could actually hear our own thoughts opposed to the noise outside. So I think that's so important. And so talking about the first end of your book, you spoke about the qualities of operating as our true self, and one of those is fearlessness.
Yes.
And I believe this was the top of the 26 attributes of the true
Yes.
self. So can you go into fearlessness? Why is that number one?
So you're right. Yogananda listed 26 soul qualities that humans need to develop in order to reach their highest potential. And he teaches that fearlessness is number one, because if we are blocked by fear, we're not even getting on the path, right?
Right.
Right. If we are, fear is fueling our decisions and it's fueling our daily life, then we aren't able to really even commit to um, a practice or anything that's going to inspire us to get to expand and to change our lives, to shake up our lives, to open up our lives, because fear is what keeps us small. So when we are in fear, we can almost certainly say that we are over identified with the ego. So that is
Mhm.
the root of fear is, oh, I'm aging, no one's going to love me, or I am not smart enough to try for my dream career, or it's too crowded, or like millions and millions of fears, like if we start to unpack them. And so that's why in the very first chapter, the practices are around really seeing your fears, bringing them out of the shadows so that they can't control us anymore. We don't know what our fears are, then we start living out these patterns. So for me, I used to get, and one of the ways to identify your fears, and instead of, the obvious ones, like I don't want to get COVID,
Fear flying, or
or I
yeah,
don't
yeah,
want to
yeah,
fall and break my leg, or
yeah, yeah.
whatever it is. Watch the triggers in your life. So watch when something takes you out of expansive, unconditional love into feeling a little jagged or small or angry or whatever it is. So I'll share a trigger for me is people didn't would interrupt me or didn't agree with, like, I had this, big thing I would share, and then they're like, no, I don't think so. And I'd be like, I know people can have a different opinion about this, but why do certain things trigger me? And I started to really sit with that and do these sorts of practices to sit in that energy, to sit in that shadow. And what I started to discover was, oh, underneath that is like a fear that I'm not worthy of being seen, because if they're interrupting, it's like, oh, I'm not being seen and heard. And so underneath that, and this took some real, working through this practice, underneath that is the fear of, oh, maybe I'm not, since I'm worthy of not being seen and not being heard, I'm not worthy of being loved. I'm not lovable. I'm, fearful of that. So then you can start to see the fear, and then you can start to work with that energy. And then, through other practices, and the practices in the love chapter, for instance, I was able to heal that by realizing, oh, we don't have to get love from outside of us. We don't need people to validate us for us to be for us to be a source of confidence. When Moses asked the Almighty, what is it that you are? And he said, I am that I am. So the fact that we are living, breathing, unique creatures, that's where our confidence comes from. That's where the love comes from inside of us. And so it really transformed my whole life from, wanting to be validated, wanting to be seen, wanting to, to be agreed with. You see this on social media. You want people to like you and follow you, all this desperateness, into realizing, oh, like, I give it to myself. Some people may light up the love that's already inside of me, but I'm not trying to get it from them. I'm not trying to take it or get it. So it really starts to transform your personal power into this true centeredness, this groundedness that is felt by all, that comes out in opportunities. It attracts relationships it attracts amazing projects and people and things to flow. It doesn't mean everything's perfect, but it is a very different way of being in the world.
I love that you share that vulnerably, your trigger, because I completely relate to that. And I'm sure a lot of people could relate to that. And I actually haven't sat with it as you explained. And when you say that it's a fear of not being seen or heard or
Yes.
whatever, I didn't even realize that's probably the exact same for me. And I
Yes.
never sat with that. So you just gave me a aha moment as well, just by sharing that. So thank you for that. So
Yeah,
I
and
know,
Erica, I
yeah,
would sit with that longer love too,
yes.
because it's and I get into it in great detail in the book, but it's the work of Carl Jung about bringing the shadows
Mm,
up, and then the work of Dr. David Hawkins, who I also reference in the book, about sitting in this, look at all darkness, which is really the absence of light. So light hasn't been put on it. It hasn't been loved and nurtured. Oh my gosh, the healing. And, when I talk about doing a detox physically, like a food detox, like a smoothie and juice cleanse, and toxins come out, it's like things are being metabolized and digested. So it opens up your GI tract. And when
mhm.
we start to see these fears, and we start to sit with them and see the root, whoa, does that open up incredible energy pathways in the body. You literally
Absolutely.
become lighter. Your frequency literally changes. And then you're not being dragged down by these fears.
And the triggers, yes,
The triggers
exactly.
are part of fears. Basically, it's like all
Mhm.
these wounds of the ego, which make your day less harmonious, and it keeps you like stewing and over evaluating and feeling angry about stuff. You just it gets easier to let things go. You know what I mean, Erica? We're just flowing along and like, okay, I'm not going to be so over involved in matter, which is out here. I'm going to be the shepherd of my own energy, connecting to the true self, which is in here.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what this is all about. What we're talking about is getting back to that true center, the true self, the
Yes.
the the perfection that we all have in our in our own light, if you want to say. And so we must go through the darkness to reveal the light. And I think that is so powerful and it's so essential. And I know your book, it's practical enlightenment for everyday life. So I'm curious, how do you define enlightenment? And do you believe to arrive at being more enlightened, we need to follow a spiritual path?
So great question. So Yes. So let's break that down. You are more than you think you are means, oh, I'm not the ego. I am the true self. What you said is simplistic and you can read it, but the profoundness is experiencing it and living life from this place, which I think is the journey of lifetimes, right? For people. Um, the word practical has to be practices. I want to know what to do, right? Because I love Eckhart Tolle, but I read some of the stuff and I'm like, but how do I, do this? How do I go beyond thought? So I wanted to provide, and it was amazing inspiration, but I wanted to provide a real guidebook. Enlightenment, this word, enlightenment for everyday life. So the Bhagavad Gita, which is an ancient text from India, which is basically, I talk about it in the warrior chapter. I don't know if you
Mhm.
got to that chapter,
Yeah.
Erica, which is really like, it's all this allegory. It's about Arjuna gets the choice of the largest army in the world or the council of Krishna. And he chooses the council of Krishna. And it's all an allegory for the battle of that we wage every day, the battle of the mind, the battle of the mind telling us we're not good enough and going into ourselves. So he chooses Krishna, and Krishna represents the voice of the true self. So the Bhagavad Gita explains how to live life from the true self. So getting on the path of living life from your true self is what is called out in the Gita as the most important thing, is getting on the path. So enlightenment means freedom, right? So this awareness, this light that that's shown inside of us into, oh, I don't have to get so wrapped up in my ego. I don't have to care so much about what people think of me. I don't have to live life so riddled with fear and, just anxiety about the future and the past. I'm on the path. Now, it doesn't mean we have to be fully enlightened. Like most of us aren't going to get there, Jesus and Buddha and Krishna and Yogananda. But, and I say this in the book, like I don't want to climb to the top of Mount Everest, but I'll go to base camp. I think there's a
Love
great view
it.
from base camp. So getting on the path and doing these practices, even like I said, 7 minutes of meditation in the morning, 5 minutes of some of the other practices during the day, this starts to shift your energy in such a big, profound way. It will change your finances. It will change your body in your shape. It will change your energy, your confidence, your intuition so much. And that's why I'm so passionate about sharing this. Is it's not, something like you eat for a pill you take for 21 days. This is once you start to see things in a different way, you don't really go back. And so it doesn't mean that you have to be perfect. It doesn't mean that your whole life has to shift, but it does mean applying some of these practices and introspective techniques to your life and living from a more and more. You will experience it, again, not in your head, you will experience it in your life, more and more freedom.
Yeah.
And then you're free to be who you really are, Erica. You're saying like, oh, I should do this, but I want to do this. Free to live from your unique heart and your unique talents and your passion and purpose and pursue that. Like
Yeah.
you are just literally more free moment to moment. I don't have the same triggers. Things don't annoy me. My in-laws are here and I am so excited to be with them. A few years ago, they would trigger me. And I can just say, wow, in this work, I take my power back. I don't let things on the outside world bother me that much. It doesn't matter that much. I'm aligned to spirit. I'm connected to the true self. And it is just, a moment to moment different way of living.
Absolutely. And there's one of the chapters that you say, living in the gaps. And I would love if you could talk about this, because I think this is a very important thing that people need to
Yes.
grasp of what this
Yes.
means.
Yes, love. So, I want to explain that practice to you, but I want to say when you were speaking earlier, I just want to make it clear that when we're talking about a spiritual path, spiritual to me is about awareness. It's not about religion, right? So,
Right.
Yogananda was clear to say this oneness, these unifying principles are energy of all things. So you don't have to be any religion. You could be a religion. Like we're talking about energy here. We're talking about universal concepts for everyone to connect with their spine, right? Everyone to learn how
Yeah.
to
Thank you for explaining that, because I
create
think
that
that's
union. Yes.
important for people to know that it starts from awareness of self,
Awareness.
and awareness to our surroundings and the energy that surrounds us as well, and how to
Exactly.
use it.
So I was raised Catholic, and when I went to India, I was like, oh, like, what is this stuff? Does this mean I'm Hindu if I'm meditating? And I'm like, oh, is yoga the same? So then I got to understand it's not about, any religion. Like I said, it's just unifying principles working with energy. So thank you for that. Now, getting into the gaps, this is a preliminary practice in chapter 4 before we get into the deeper practices that continue through the book. But the yogis teach that, the way that a lake that's completely calm reflects the moonlight, right? Or you can see in a calm lake. And if you throw a bunch of rocks in there, or let's say a boat goes by and everything gets all wavy, it's all distorted, right?
That's a great way to, I love,
You're,
sorry. It's a great way to, this
yes.
analogy is perfect.
So you think about the energy of the true self is that calm place inside of us. It's the equanimity, it's the peace. And so that's what we want to create. And the issue is that most of us are running from thing to thing. We have alerts and to-do lists, and we're not really present where we are. So the expanding the gaps practice is teaching us, and some of us for the very first time, how to even find a micro moment of stillness. And once you experience it, it starts to expand more and more in your life. It starts to expand in the gaps between thoughts, in the gaps between pausing and tuning into your intuition before you eat something. It's very practical. Before you say something or write an email. So can I demonstrate it with you, Erica, for 10
Please, yes.
seconds here?
Yeah.
So very simple practice. Just take an exhale for a moment. And then everyone can do this with us as long as you're able to. And just take an inhale for a count of 4. You can keep your eyes open if you need to. Otherwise, you can close them. So 2, 3, 4, and then hold your breath in at the top just for a moment. Pause. And then exhale. 2, 3, 4, and then pause empty at the bottom. And then inhale, 2, 3, 4, and pause full at the top. And then exhale, 2, 3, 4, pause empty at the bottom. And then inhale and breathe normally. So what this practice teaches us is that when we're inhaling and we're exhaling, there's still action. But in between the breaths, this is a preliminary meditation practice. In between the breaths, there is that micro moment of stillness when the breath is full or when the breath is empty. You'll start to notice it when you watch your breath. There's that moment when it turns from the inhales to the exhales. And just by marinating in that moment, did you feel it, Erica? It was like this expansive stillness. We can start to understand what stillness is, and we experience it. So then we can go deeper and deeper. But again, most of us aren't even understanding that these gaps are so necessary. If there aren't gaps in music, it's just like, chaos and noise in our lives. If we're programming things back to back to back, Zooms and picking up your kids and doing all this stuff, we're not really living. We're just kind of like in automatic mode. And so the gaps in your breath start to feel amazing. And then you start to expand those gaps, like I said, into your life and going deeper into your practice.
Beautiful. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate that. And another thing, when we're talking about meditation, a lot of the things that you mentioned in the book, when you go over the practices, is first starting with the intention and then ending in gratitude.
Yes.
I think it's important people to know that. And I, after reading this, I now very much more intentionally set my intention before a meditation. And I think that's a great way. I know that Deepak Chopra does this all the time in his meditations. He always leads it with an intention.
Yes.
So I think it's so beautiful for people to know that and why we should do that.
Well, I think it's important to go into anything with you direct energy with an intention. So the intention could be as simple as, I want to connect and be more present here. I want to breathe right now. And that's one of the reasons it's so important to meditate in the morning as close as possible to when you wake up. And that way you're setting an intention for self connection, true self connection. And that sets the energy for the day. So it affects how susceptible you are to food cravings, for instance, or, coming from a deeper place in your decisions and work, or how you want to move your body that day and exercise, or the conversations that you have. And it gives you more of that centered power. So you're less reactive and more responsive from your truth. There's less mess to clean up. Like, oh, I'm so sorry. I sounded short. I shouldn't have done that. Or, it's just like this messiness when we're not centered. So we want to have that intention of centering our energy. And that's why, morning meditation I recommend is a really powerful practice.
Before turning on our phone, before looking through our email, before any of that
Yes,
stuff that distracts
totally.
us. Yes, it's so important. And you also mentioned this concept of the sun and moon cycle. And I love this that you share this, because I think so many people, as you were talking about, we get in this shame of our past and what we've done and the way
Yes.
we've been. But really, it's accepting the totality of our human experience of who we've been, who we are, and who we're becoming in the process of. So, can you explain the sun and moon cycle and what
Yes.
this signifies?
So this is a practice in the I am whole chapter. And so you say like who we are, who we're becoming. So the funny thing in the oneness, there's this duality where we do have this human part of us that is learning and growing and stumbling along and making mistakes. And we are in the human body. So we are having an embodied experience. So that's the part of us that is, becoming. But at the same time, we have this part of us, that stable part of us, the true self that is who we are, this eternal part of us that will keep going after this body goes away. So we're becoming and we are here at the same time. Is that, it's a funny thing to
Yes.
wrap your head around.
Yeah.
But with the becoming part comes behavior. So in this practice, we write out our sun qualities, which I'm, in this category. It's not as linear as this, but you say all the things that we would like to share, like I'm a good listener. I'm really, kind. I am generous. But then we also list our moon qualities, which are the parts of us that are in the shadow of it. We don't really like to talk about them. Oh, I can be actually really judgmental. I can actually be, stingy, and I can be closed-minded, whatever all the qualities we are. We know that we exhibit. So this is a private practice and it needs to be done after you meditate. So you're more open to this. And this is something we go back to time and time again. So then there's more steps to it. But basically, when you look at your moon qualities and your sun qualities together, this total package of behaviors, you can learn a lot. And you can also say, okay, there's things I have learned from, and you look at it and then you let it go, because you realize that ultimately your behaviors are not you. You are more than that. You are this stable part of you. So eventually we move towards where there is an alignment between right action and an extension of our true self, our heart. But until that, we're still unstable. We're still, figuring things out. So it is very important, as you said, Erica, to learn the lessons, but to let go of the guilt and shame, because otherwise it becomes this very heavy energy that drags us down. And when Carl Jung talks about the shadow, it's these disowned parts of us. So we'll be in a conversation and you'll be like, yeah, I'm talking about this. But if you really, in the back of your head, somewhere in your subconscious, there's this part of you that's like, oh, but if you really knew what I did, you wouldn't like me.
Uh-huh.
Right. And it affects, it's fear. It keeps us small. So part of that chapter is really embracing the light and the dark and the integration and the wholeness, and realizing that even with all that, we are always whole and complete. We are stable. There's a stable part of us underneath this inner resource that we can connect to.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. And also, I know you talk about confidence, and there's this chapter that you speak about fake confidence and then true confidence.
Yes.
Can you explain that?
Yes. So this is a big one because I think that, people really struggle with confidence today. I think some of the people that come across as really confident are some of the most insecure people. And I've worked with many of them. And in those quiet moments, you really see, how people can crumple,
Yeah.
right? It's very flimsy. So what I talk about is surface confidence versus true confidence. So surface confidence is attached to the ego. It's very flimsy, knocked around. I'm confident because of what I look like.
Yeah.
I'm confident because of my achievements. And I use the example in the book, like, this a tech person could be really confident and then their stock is really high, but then someone has new technology and their stock drops. So then they lose their confidence. Or if a woman derives mostly her confidence from how she looks, she ages or she gains 10 pounds and her confidence is going to get dinged around. Our true confidence cannot be based on the ego, which by nature is fleeting and changing. And so the more we attach to that, the more we will suffer. So the solution to the problem can't be found in the same system. So the system is the ego. So we don't get more confident by trying to get more work done, by trying to create more achievements, by trying to do more stuff. Of course, we're in the world. We want to feel our best. We want to have skills and create things and look good. There's nothing wrong with any of that, but we don't want to mistake that for our identity and our self-worth. We don't want to put our self-worth in the always changing, because then we will always suffer. So true confidence comes, it's like layers of the onion, like, who am I? What am I meant to be confident about? And it literally goes down to the core, which, again, I experience only through these practices, Erica. So it's like the world is telling you something different. You have to go inside. The very root of confidence is what I said earlier. Moses, I am that I am. The confidence comes because I'm alive and breathing, and I'm a unique creation of spirit. And that's it. It's the energy, it's the soul, it's the divine connection, not confidence from this stuff. We can enjoy this stuff. We all want to look good, like I said, out here. But the real confidence comes from. And so I talk about this a little bit in the beauty chapter too, which is
Yeah, I was
really
going to touch on.
interesting take on beauty. Everybody is unique. So by nature, everybody is beautiful in their own way. But I say this, what makes someone radiantly beautiful is the degree to which they are connected to the true self, to themselves. And they may not always use this language, right? Like you could say, some French women just have that, like, je ne sais
Je ne
quoi.
sais quoi.
There's just like, I'm confident for being this. So it's that naturalness, it's that comfortability of just being yourself that's so attractive. It's just, when you're natural with yourself and comfortable with yourself, other people really feel comfortable because they know I'm not judging myself, so I'm not judging you. And so there's space for everybody to just be. And that's beautiful, expansive quality that's always going to be much more magnetic.
Absolutely. I think that it's so important for people to hear that. And I know you've always talked about beauty. Obviously, you have a beauty
Yes.
line even. So beauty is important to you, but it's that true essence, that radiance that comes from the inner out. So I think it is so
Yes.
important for people to cultivate that, but the only way we could do that is by going within.
It's
So, and
true.
accepting all parts of us and our true essence and light that is within all of us. Also, I was going to mention that, oh, you mentioned magnetic, and I love, my favorite chapter is probably how to become magnetic. And I know you
Oh,
share your story. And the reason why I I gravitate towards that is because I more in my life, I'm trying to manifest things in my life. And what does that take
hmm
of me is becoming the person that is attracting that. It's not about, magnetizing per se something by wanting it and doing all the action towards it. It's actually becoming it before so that I could attract all that I desire. So I recently interviewed the daughters of Dr. Wayne Dyer. And so I've been diving a lot into Dr. Wayne Dyer's work. More and more. And of course, he talks about that we don't attract what we want, we attract who we are. And so when it comes to your chapter to become magnetic, you share how you attracted your husband, John, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And I love how you share this story because I think that people need to hear about how we become magnetic and then we could have and obtain, if you want to say, everything we desire in our life, our success,
Yes,
our health, our beauty, and all these things by cultivating it within us first. So
that's
interesting.
right. So magnetism acknowledges the fact, as we were speaking about earlier, that everything is energy, whether you see it or not. That's the truth. Like, that's what's happening. And so it's far more powerful to start to work with the energy versus pretend it's not there, or not even know it's not there. Like, this is why these practices are so powerful and these teachings are so powerful. So when we are identified with ego, we're constantly focused on what's coming in, right? Like, oh, this amount of money's coming in. I want more. Like, you're kind of hammering on the outside, or I want more followers. Let's talk about social media for a minute. It's like this external lack energy is dominant. Magnetism means that you start to tune into your inner state, and it's about, what are you putting out? What is that going to attract? Because that's actually what you have control over, and that's actually the most powerful place to be. So I'll share that story. I'll share the brief version, but basically, I went through the hardest time of my life about 4 years ago, when my mom passed away suddenly. In 6 weeks from when we found out she had cancer, she was gone. And it sort of was this waking up moment for me. In the relationship I was in before wasn't as connected and deeply, fulfilling as I wanted it to be. He's a great guy, but it just wasn't there. So I was a new mom. My son wasn't even one. My first son wasn't one. I lost my mom, and then I moved out and became a single mom. And this is all like in a kind of condensed time frame.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh shit, my life is not turning out the way I thought it was. Rock bottom, right? So then I took the advice of one of the monks I met at the Self Realization Fellowship, which is Yogananda's meditation based organization.
Is that the
And
one in Malibu, by the way?
so it's global. They have hundreds and
Okay.
hundreds of temples, but there is one on Lake Shrine is
Yeah.
here. There's a temple in Hollywood. They're all over the world,
Okay.
many cities. So he said, treat your home like an ashram for 5 months. So this is before COVID. And I took care of my son and I did my work. But other than that, I really, I treated it like an ashram. So I meditated, I prayed, and I read thousands of pages of scripture and old just works. I read the New Testament of the Bible, I read the Gita, I read the Mahabharata, the Ramayana. I read all these old texts, and I just went really deep in, Erica, working on my inner energy. And I went from feeling really fearful, back to my old trigger, like, am I lovable? Is anyone gonna love me? Especially now I'm a single mom, right? The deepest fears were just like unleashed. And I sat in it and I did these practices. And what happened is I emerged into a new state of trust in myself, trust in the true self, just trust that I was strong enough to get through. And I felt very whole. I felt very centered. I didn't feel this like I needed to get stuff out here. I felt like, oh, all that I'm seeking, I can actually connect with inside of me. So I was walking around the world exuding that. And, some months after that, after my little quasi self isolation period ended, I was at a random dinner party, actually, like through like a podcast thing with someone that had been on my podcast. We'd done an exchange. Didn't really know him very well, but it was this dinner party in Venice Beach. And one of the people was John, my future hubby. Now, Erica, if I hadn't done this, if I hadn't done these practices, and I think, oh my gosh, how many people walk right by their soulmate,
Mm.
right? I don't think I would have recognized him because, physically, I'm like, oh, he's not my type. Like, he's just different. Like, his whole body from the neck down is covered in tattoos. He's got a gold grill in his teeth. I'm plant-based. He's like a huge meat smoker, like motorcycles, just,
So funny.
just whatever, the MMA fighting, like very different. But then what I tuned into, because I was in that place of intuition, I was like, feeling energy from a deeper place. I just felt his heart
Mm.
and he felt my heart. And this is a guy who said he would never get married. He didn't go through with it, Erica, but a few years ago, he actually went into a doctor's office to get a vasectomy. He said, I never want kids. And then the third day after we met, we'd been hanging out, he told me he loved me. And he's like, so I'm in, like, I'm ready to get married. So it's
Wow.
just this like
Mm.
recognition. So that's where what's really exciting about this work too is that you go beyond time and space. And what I mean by that is when you start to step into this like quantum world of energy, things we would call miracles, things can turn around like that. I was just like, oh my gosh, here's my soulmate. And then he loved Emerson, my older son, immediately. We got together, then we had another baby. And then I was living in this like really fancy house with my ex, but it never felt like mine, my place. And then now we live in the mountains and nature, which really feels like me. And now we've also bought a farm in Hawaii and we go there at least once a month. So this life has unfolded from that real deep connection. And again, it's like again, you go past time and space, you move into energy, which is very powerful. And not it doesn't it's not woo woo. There's science to it, but all this struggling, all this arduousness, Erica, it doesn't always have to be that way. So magnetism is about working with the inner state, and it's this repeated frequency that starts to call in and create what you want from the outside.
Mm, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that story. And I know some of the things you mentioned you could play with is affirmations and mantra to possibly cultivate that more magnetic beingness within ourselves. And
Yes. In
the
specific ways, because sometimes affirmations get a bad rap because, like, it's like, like saying this stuff and you're just spitting out words and you're kind of lying to yourself. But there is a
mm,
yogic technique for specifically merging with the energy behind the words that I have used personally that is very powerful.
ooh, and I love that. And you talk about that, I know, more into depth in your
Yes.
book.
There's a
Yeah.
chapter on it.
There's one specific thing I want to mention because I don't think a lot of people have done this practice. And I remember this was a long, long time ago. I remember looking myself in the mirror and I'm like, who, like, I didn't think I
Mm,
looked like that. And I remember this is so, so long ago when I was not like connected with myself or anything. And I was probably insecure and all these things, but I didn't see like who I saw. I'm like, that's what I look like. But you talk about this thing called mirror gazing. And I
yes.
would love if you could describe this practice that I think people should really try because you'll see yourself in a whole different light. And we never do this. So
Yeah.
if you
So
could
this is
explain it
a
for me.
This is also an ancient Ayurvedic practice from one of the Samhita scriptures. And it is, a specific technique, but I'll summarize a little bit of it here is when we look in the mirror, we're usually looking at our makeup or if there's something in our teeth or we're combing our hair, but we're not really looking into the true self. So in this practice, it's about, getting a foot away from the mirror and really looking into each eye. And then you look at your third eye, you start to connect, you start to look down into the light of your soul. And when you start to really do the practice, the first time I did this, I just cried so much because you realize we haven't really looked in to who we are. And then that just opens up so much compassion, healing, like this well of, you know, seeingness. We realize we can see ourselves, we can validate ourselves, we can self-soothe ourselves. We don't need the sugar. We don't need all the people to like our dances on TikTok necessarily to feel that same. We can give it to ourselves, is what I'm saying. And so yeah, these practices are life changing.
Yes. And I obviously want to honor your time. And I know you share immense amount of practices in this book. Every chapter it ends in a practice of something that could take us
Yes.
deeper and they build on each other. But one of the things that you say is a game changer is really connecting to the oneness.
Mm.
So what does oneness mean? How do you explain oneness? This
So
experience.
oneness again, there's this like, the duality of like the becoming and then we've become, right? So there's like the human part of us and then there's the true self part of us that is our true identity. And we are spirit individualized. Each and every single one of us is a unique, beautiful soul with a unique purpose. Yet at the same time, we come from the same source. So it's sort of like how there's many, many waves in the ocean, you can say, and the ocean can exist without the wave, but the wave can't exist without the ocean. So it means we're all these ripples of spirit. So oneness means that we start to connect into this, going out of Newtonian physics, which is this separate entity, into this more quantum. Oh, we're all in this quantum soup of energy. We're all in this together. So oneness means that we stop looking at other people as separate and strangers and like I only care about my little inner circle of my family. And we start to get that looking into your eyes, Erica, which I'm doing right now. It's like I'm seeing myself in a way, right? Because we're all this different parts of spirit. So we are all brothers and sisters. We are all connected. We are all here to support each other and to love each other. So when you start to see this interconnectedness, which comes actually from self outward. So it comes the more you connect with yourself and you, oh my gosh, this is who I am. You start to see the light more and more in other people instead
Oh,
of
yeah.
focusing on like, the mind judging, like, oh my gosh, did she get a nose job? Or how did she afford that purse? Or like, oh, that person gained 10 pounds. We're focused on this stuff. Really, it's just like, who cares? Like, oh, look at this like amazing soul. Like I'm blown away. Like I'm just like here. Like I don't want to be anywhere else. So what it means is your moment to moment experience. I'm getting goosebumps. It's like
Me
you
too.
don't you need less stuff. You need like my husband and I, a perfect night is just like in Hawaii. We sit on the porch and we talk for hours and we look out on the lawn. Like we don't need the fancy dinners. We don't need to get, a bottle of wine, even though that's nice sometimes, but we don't need all the entertainment and stuff as much because this moment is so magical. And so when you sit with other people, you start to see and like feel so connected. Oh my God, Erica, it is amazing. And then you don't want to harm anyone else. You don't want to speak meanly of other people because you have compassion. You may sense the darkness, which is really an absence of light in some of their behaviors, but you
Mhm.
love them. You don't abandon. And then
Mhm.
everything it changes your whole experience of life and of community and of connection.
So beautiful. I love how you explain that. And actually, experience with my boyfriend and I, we were handing out little, if you want to say, Thanksgiving meals for homeless, just in our area. We
Mm,
just like packaged meals. And as we're dropping them off, we hand it to the homeless person individually. And we experienced that complete oneness yesterday, is seen,
mm.
like my boyfriend even mentioned, he's like, they are us, that, and just the experience, you notice, like, you know it gets you so emotional because you're like, why are they homeless? Like, you just want to give more, but you see yourself in them, and I think they're so grateful. And
Mm.
it's just such a profound experience when you are able to see people as yourself. Like, you see their humanness, you see
Yes,
their light. Like, I love how you explain that darkness is just light that's being dimmed by outside circumstance or
exactly.
choices or whatever. Yes, that everybody has that light it still remains in them.
So imagine the homeless people are like, obviously like an extreme example, right? But if you walk around the world and you look at someone and someone you may judge before, like let's say someone's doing like something crazy on YouTube and you're like, oh, like they're just attention seeking or whatever it is. But if you really look in their eyes, you'll see the light underneath, but you may also see the pain, the struggle, because they're identified with the ego. So for them, that attention seeking behavior is their way of getting love. They're still trying to get it from out here. So it's like the more we can just see people, then that starts to expand and then they start to see themselves more. I mean, it's great healing, I think that's needed right now in the collective, right? It's just like we see who people are underneath their behaviors.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so just to wrap up, of course, I'm going to include your book in the show notes. And you said also you provide a lot of free meditation available. I think you said you release a new one every week. Is that what you said?
Yes, yes, at mysolluna.com.
Amazing. So if you were to leave, uh, let's say a practice with anybody just to begin today, like something they could like take action today, maybe it's questions they should ask themselves. Maybe it's, you know, going into a quiet space, what would you recommend just to start somebody on a path today after listening to this?
So I recommend starting with the practical enlightenment meditations for sure, which are 7 minutes, which are guided, and I'll take you into this central energy channel. And I think that is the most important practice that you cannot get around is meditation. I will also say that something you can start to apply just in your everyday life is to notice, am I in my true self or am I not? And it becomes very simple. Am I in my heart? Do I feel like I'm radiating love in this conversation, in this moment, in how I'm showing up? Or am I not? And if I'm not, why is that? So you just start to sit with that. Oh, this person, you always want to project first, but then we're like, no, actually, everyone's a mirror. Like, oh, no, that really annoys me when people do this. Like we were saying earlier, Erica,
Yeah.
oh, what's the root of that? Oh, makes me not feel good about myself or makes me feel like I can't be seen or I'm not lovable, whatever it is. The more we just start to notice, the answers might not come right away. But as humans, we do have this capacity as we work towards enlightenment, we get on this path to live from this radiant heart energy all the time, right? We become lighter, everything flows. So in the moments where we're not, just sit with that and start to notice what triggered that. Is really powerful for
So
starting to
powerful.
unlock a lot of big healing.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And just in closer, I always ask the question, if you were to leave a piece of advice that you feel anybody needs to hear right now, it could be anything, just life lessons that you would like to part onto us. What would that be?
Oh, wow. Whew. Well, there's a quote in here that I would love to read as my piece of advice because I do think that, this incredible wisdom that comes from Yogananda is something I'm so passionate about sharing and, living it out in life. It is actually the quote at the beginning of the fearlessness chapter on
Okay.
chapter 17. Darkness may reign in a cave for thousands of years, but bring in the light, and the darkness vanishes as though it had never been.
Mm.
The reason I want to bring this up is we can shift our lives like that, right? It's like sometimes we think there has to be like all this buildup, we have to do this big like overhaul, but these practices, this way of looking at things, it can change everything. And we are in control of that. It's the inner state that creates outwardly. So I would just say to keep focusing on this inner connection and this inner state instead of a lack of what's coming in or what's not coming in, and really transform your life from the inside out.
So beautiful. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. It's a beautiful quote and also how you break it down. This has been so much fun, Kimberly. I adore
Thank you
you
so
so much.
much.
It's so nice just seeing your face again and seeing your work, come to life. Another book. You said this your sixth book, and I know
Yes,
it comes
the
out
best
January
one.
20th. I know January 20th. I can't even imagine. Like, I'm so excited for people to get this. And it's so necessary now. And I think since we're moving out of so much, well, we're always in fear, right? There's fear always surrounding us, but we get to choose a different path. And this is really, really the practical guide to move out of fear and into love and into faith and into joy and truly living from a light
Mm,
free space. And I think this is work that we will do the rest of our lives.
yes.
It's never gonna be an endpoint to any of this work. So to have this at your fingertips and to just read back to is so great. I have highlighted so much in it. So
Yay.
I'm so
Amazing.
excited for people to get their book. So of course it will be in the show notes. And everybody go follow Kimberly Snyder. She is just such a light and she shares so much on her page. And of course,
Mm,
Solluna, you have products, you have obviously things to help with gut
yes.
probiotics, detoxing.
Courses, the Solluna Circle. We have our community
Yeah,
program.
so much.
Yes. High performance skincare, all kinds of things.
I know. And I know your Black Friday sale just ended, but I know you're always offering so much. So definitely go check it out. It all will be in the show notes. So Kimberly, again, thank you. It's been an honor.
Oh, thank you so much, Erica. I loved our conversation. I love being with you.
Thank you.